Okay, so thank you everybody for coming to Word on Street this year. I know it's a little bit different, but we will try our best to make it just as exciting. So before we begin, I'm just going to acknowledge the land. The Lethbridge Public Library acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respects to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The city of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Also, before we begin, if you are interested in purchasing the cookbook today that we are going to discuss, or any of the other books, they are available if you visit the festival website, and there's a link to the University of Lethbridge bookstore. In this case, we have signed copies of the cookbook, so if you're looking for that, you can get them there. So let's begin with Shane. So Shane Chartrand of the Enoch Cree Nation is at the forefront of the re-emergence of the Indigenous cuisine in North America. In 2015, Chartrand was invited to participate in the prestigious international chef contingent of Cook It Raw, and has since competed on Food Network Canada's Iron Chef Canada and Chopped Canada. Currently, Chartrand is the executive chef at the acclaimed SC restaurant at the River Cree Resort and Casino in Enoch, Alberta. And then we also have Jennifer Cockrall-King, who was born and raised in Edmonton and is a Canadian food writer who now lives in the small community of Naramata in British Columbia's Okanagan Valley. Her writing has appeared in publications across North America, including Maclean's, Reader's Digest, 18 Bridges, Canadian Geographic, and enRoute magazine. This is her third cookbook. So I'll pass it off to Shane and Jennifer.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. This is a lot of fun. Should we just talk about our book? Is that?
I think that's a pretty good idea.
I like your hat, Shane.
Yeah, thank you. I decided to throw it back on, but yeah, I think the thing about the book, I think as we've been talking over the past few years about this, and I shouldn't say a few years, it hasn't been out that long, but still, I mean, writing this book is quite the journey. So I mean, from the way your perspective is and mine are a little different, but I mean, let's go over yours again.
Okay, so for those of you who are attending, and we'll assume you haven't seen or read the book, Shane and I we wrote a cookbook called tawâw. This is actually Shane's story. It's his recipes, they're his stories, and Shane and I come from the same place but different backgrounds, but we've known each other for quite some time. So we both were in the Edmonton food community. We knew of one another. And about 2014, I believe, Shane phoned me one day, and we talked for about an hour and a half. And his idea, he phoned me out of the blue because he wanted to write a cookbook. He had some recipes, he had ideas in his head, and I was a writer, and he kept hearing my name and thought he would give me a call. And that's Shane. He just has an idea and he starts to act on it. We had this really great conversation. We didn't know what the book was going to be called at the time. We didn't even know what the stories were going to be, but we started building a friendship. And I think that was probably the first thing we did, is we kept meeting regularly over about a year and a half and just got to know one another and started to tell stories to one another. And I was very captivated by Shane's stories. And obviously his cooking was top notch. He was already getting a lot of notice in Canada for being a very innovative chef, doing some interesting things. So that was the very beginning. What's your side of the story, Shane?
Well, I've never said this to you before. And so this is a new piece of information. Sometimes we do these interviews and stuff. And the one thing that I never did say was the fact that I know and it's actually what you just said about me is the fact that I do act quick and spontaneous. And you know why I do it? It's because I feel like if I don't do it now, I'm gonna overthink it, and then I'm gonna ruin it. You know, it's just like when I compete, like you were saying, competition. When I compete, I think of my first idea, switch it around a bit, but try to stick to my guns. And it's like doing TV. It's like doing this. I didn't plan this. I don't have anything written down. I get nothing in my mind. I just talk to the minute, a la minute, to the minute, you know. And it's just because it's the way I do things. It's easier for me to do things that way than make all these plans. Now, when it came to the book, the reason why Jen is such a big influence on this too, because like I said before, to everybody, your name should be just as big, because Jen is the one that she's got to calm me down. She's got to get me my head back on straight and make sure I'm focused. It's not that I'm not focused, but I still got to make sure I'm very accurate, and I'm not sometimes. You know, Jen said it best. Sometimes I'll just grab some ingredients and make something, and then her head spinning is like, where did this come out of? Where'd this come from out of left field? And I think that was the sweet potato salad, was it not?
Yeah, a lot of recipes. So yeah, I mean, this is our dynamic. So Shane is super creative, super inventive, has all these inspirations, and I'm much more methodical. So we couldn't be sort of more different, but we were perfect for each other. So as we started talking about this project, and we should maybe tell people about your background, Shane, and where you came from in terms of your cooking as well, because that is really the story of tawâw.
I'll tell you about my background, but I got to back this up for a second. You got to realize you are also creative, because you're the one that helped Julie Van Rosendahl with all the background. She had all the stuff, but it was you two that got together to make those pictures come together. You know what I mean? And then you also guided Catherine Sprague, our photographer, through that. So I wouldn't say you're not creative at all. You're smart. And I'm not the brightest guy on the block. I do things because I just want to do them. So I think you're an artist in your own right, and it's just a different way of looking at it. My background, I'm from the Enoch Cree tribe here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I'm a Red Seal chef. I graduated school when I was about 25, 24. I took my wine studies. I didn't finish them all, but I did my wine studies. I did a lot of traveling from Toronto to LA to New York. My shows I've been on: Chop Canada, Iron Chef, Wallace Chefs, Fridge Wars, and a few more coming up too. And then also my experiences of apprenticeship and working with a mentorship over the years. I've worked with a lot of really, really great chefs to get me to where I am. I'm not going to say their names just because, but there's been about 6 different people that are influential. I will say one name just because he's in the book anyway. I would say people that influence me are like Ryan O'Flynn is a massive influence to me. I'll never let him know that. The competition world.
That's right.
Mark Lepin, strangely, is a massive influence to me. I spent a very little amount of time with him. Local chefs, and not just chefs. It's not always about chefs that influence me. My parents influenced me. So my mom is Micmac, which is pronounced Mi'kmaq. My dad's Métis, which of course is my name, Shane Medrick Chartrand, which is actually, I just say Shane Medrick Chartrand, because if I speak French, they're gonna think I know how to speak French, and I only know comme ci, comme ça. My real name is Shane St. John Gordon, and I'm from the Enoch tribe. So I got 2 names. I got 2 lives.
Yeah. And so Shane was starting to work on becoming, well, Shane was working at a fairly high level in Edmonton as an executive chef at various places. And for those who haven't read the book, he was told where he was from when he was 29. So, you know, all these years you didn't know what your home nation was, who your nation were. Yeah. And so one day somebody walked into work and basically told you where you were from, and I think your world turned on a dime that day.
Yeah, it was really exciting and super, super scary. What happened was I was at a restaurant on the west end of Edmonton, and this Indigenous guy came in and found out that there's an Indigenous chef. And I don't know why he was pushing so hard to meet me, but he did, and I was too busy. You got to realize it's a 600-seat restaurant and it's lunchtime. So I figured it out to get out there. I said, man, this guy's not giving up. I went out, and then he just asked strange questions. And then it's almost like, and I don't want to sound so Indigenous about this. It's almost like the creator sent me to him, and I've never seen him since. I know he's still out on the Enoch Nation. I've never seen him since. And he's the guy that was the one that introduced me to my family, because I showed him what he said, what's the oldest picture you have of you? I said, a picture of me with my brothers, I think, Shane, John, and Gordon, because there's 3 boys in the picture. He's like, no, that's your name. Those boys are, your name is Shane, John, Gordon, and you're my first cousin.
And once Shane found out where he was from, your cooking changed quite a bit.
My cooking didn't change right away. What I had to start doing was thinking a little bit more about the Indigenous world, because I mean, I knew I was or First Nations, Indigenous, whatever word you want to use. I just knew that I was like I always was. But the thing was, I didn't celebrate it, because if you don't know your identity, how are you supposed to celebrate it? I mean, I can celebrate Indigenous food, I can celebrate all that stuff, but what's the point? Because I don't, do I celebrate Haida? Do I celebrate the Blood Tribe? Do I celebrate Kainai? Do I celebrate the Métis settlements, Kikino, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what to celebrate. So that's why I didn't go that route. And then once I found out where I was from, I had to learn about what tawâw was. You know what I mean? I had to learn all that first, and then I started changing my food.
Right. Yeah. And then we met and we started talking about your cooking, and we started putting together recipes, but it took us a couple of years to hit our stride with the type of food that you actually see in the cookbook, because like most books, you kind of cast around in the dark and you try this and you try that. And we were just trying on different things to see what recipes would fit and how we would organize things. And then really, it was actually when we'd put together a book proposal, and we had a different name for the cookbook, because tawâw was actually a name for the cookbook that came when we had our publisher in place, House of Anansi, and we can talk about that later. But we were working with a different name. We were calling it marrow, from the bone, what's inside you. It's nourishing, it's significant. And so we had this cookbook proposal. It was a 30-page document with a bunch of recipes, a bit of Shane's stories, some photos. And it was actually one, and we were shopping it around to different publishers in Canada. And we were sort of getting some interest, but they could tell that we hadn't quite dialed in our concept. But that's okay. That happens with books, right? I wasn't worried. And anyways, one night Shane was in the restaurant cooking, as he does, and some people were in, and they kept insisting on seeing the chef. They had a wonderful dinner. They wanted to see the chef. And Shane had been cooking all night. He was tired. He smelled like he was in the kitchen all day and he didn't want to go out, but thankfully Shane did, because it was actually the people who ended up publishing our cookbook, and they just wanted to talk to Shane, and they said, you know, we love your food, you really should write a cookbook. And Shane said, well, actually, we've been working on one. So we sent them our proposal, and within about 48 hours, we had figured out this was the right publisher for us. And then we worked really hard with House of Anansi on dialing in the concept and coming up with the beautiful cover, and actually coming up with the name tawâw, which is Cree for come in, welcome, there's room. And it was this idea that this book includes everybody. So these are Shane's recipes, Shane's story, but it's really a cookbook that invites everyone to dig into the stories and dig into the recipes and just start to cook. They may look intimidating because they're very creative and they're very beautiful, and you might not have seen all the ingredients in one place. But trust me, Saskatoons are easier to come by. Saskatoon berries are easier to come by than, you know, pineapples and mangoes. So that was part of the story that got tawâw off. And then we just worked really hard. And Shane is super creative, and I had to chase him around the kitchen with a pen and paper as he was cooking.
Yeah.
Like right out of his brain. So Shane's really inspired by emotions and stories and memories. So he doesn't start with ingredients. Maybe tell them a little bit about how you start to come up with.
The one thing about the book is there's a lot of stories in it, I don't like to talk about trying to be this hyper Indigenous chef, and stories is really a part of the Indigenous culture, but it's also about humans, period. We all love stories. And that's the thing. That's what invokes my life. I mean, you do these events, you go to these seminars, these long drawn seminars, and you're half asleep going through it all. So the one thing I like to do is try to really juice it up and not exaggerate and not tell lies. Keep it truth, keep it real, keep it organic. But the big thing was to make sure that we have those stories in there. And it's because provoking emotion to me would be a small example. And Jen's heard me say this before. A small example would be when you wake up in the morning and you have a bad breakfast. And you make it for yourself, the eggs are overcooked, the toaster wasn't working properly, you're eating, you're like, it's okay. Your day's already off. And food changes your life. It changes your emotion. It can make you happy, it can make you sad, it can make other people happy. Did you know the reason I got into cooking was one, there's a few reasons, but I'm going to tell you only one reason why I got into cooking. It was never about money or being this chef that's won these awards and these cookbooks and all this stuff. And you know what it was? When I was cooking, and I provoke and want people to think about looking at this when you go to a restaurant next time. Look at the couples that are sitting together, having dinner, laughing, enjoying themselves. Their life is like at the minute, just that minute, sitting in a restaurant, eating steak tartare or eating fish and chips, whatever it is. That's the reason why I love cooking. That's the reason I never quit. And believe me, cooking is not an easy world. Being in hotels, bistros, sushi bars, breakfast. I've worked in like 35 restaurants, stages all over. But the reason why I love it so much is to see people happy. Now, there's a flip side to that. That would be the people that complain. But there's an easy way to fix that too. It's very easy. Kill them with kindness. Trust me, they're fine. Yeah. But also with that said, it's really stories to anybody. I mean, me and Jen sat there, and I know enough. I know enough about Jen now to say, like, and again, Jen's gonna say this about the Jen and Shane Love Fest. The thing is, it's about getting the information out of me that I don't know that's interesting to somebody else. Right. That's what Jen did. She got the information out. she picked the recipes. She said, Shane, I don't know about that one. You know what I mean? So it's the partnership, it's everything that makes a book like this happen. And I don't think there's a book like it. I'm not trying to say that to be all about me and Jen. It's just, I don't see a book like it. I mean, I just went to the bookstore the other day. I bought a bunch of cookbooks and stuff just to see, and they're okay. They're good. There's some good ones, and there's some great chefs. I just don't think they were able to do what me and Jed did with stories.
It was a really interesting project to work on because we kind of were inventing our own little wheel. That's not to say there aren't other really great cookbooks out there by other Indigenous chefs, and there certainly are. But every book is different. Every book is reflective of the people who write it. And so Shane's story is one of growing up in Alberta, going through foster care. So from the age of 1.5 to almost 7, getting adopted by this wonderful family, Dennis and Belinda Chartrand, his parents, growing up on this acreage, gardening, plucking chickens, helping his dad, going hunting with his dad, going hunting on these great survival trips that his dad would take him on. And his dad, we say this in the book, Dennis always wanted Shane to have a connection with his Indigenous roots, but without knowing exactly who your relatives were, it was a bit vague. So when Shane did find out, and coincidentally was, living near Edmonton and could be on the Enoch Nation, started meeting people, talking to elders. And that's one thing that Shane does really well, is he gathers information. He's always on the hunt for the next information bundle that can put together the pieces of the puzzle of his life. And then it all gets expressed through food, which was so wonderful to be a part of. So I was just sitting back watching this all happen a lot of the time. And then I would cue Shane. I would say, this is really interesting. I don't know this. So Shane and I, we grew up in Alberta at the same time. We're kind of the same age. 2 different realities, 2 different backgrounds. I'm so curious about Shane's world. And so I would ask all the questions that maybe other non-Indigenous people are too afraid to ask for fear of, saying something wrong or, being awkward or something like that. So we had this really easy back and forth. And I think that's why the book feels the way it does, because Shane was so open to telling me what I needed to know. And I was there for him to tell him what was interesting from my perspective. So, and so that's how the book got created. We built it page by page, story by story, recipe by recipe.
So the thing about that is some of the things I do naturally, I just do them. I'm good at, I'm not trying to say that I don't want to sound big-headed by saying this, but I cook for a reason, and I was never that good, to be fair. I was never that good. It took me a lot longer to become a good chef than it took a lot of other people. A lot of people just had it in them. But the reason I did it was because I wanted to pay homage to the people I know. My parents, my uncles, my families, my friends, other chefs that I got to meet. But it's funny because the one dish that Jen likes, and you're always the one to say it, so I'm going to say it, is I do this dish called, it's puffed wild rice. And wild rice is a Mi'kmaq. It comes from the Mi'kmaq Nation, mostly. That's where most of it's grown. And I take it, I boil it, I strain it, then I dehydrate it or dry it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go buy a dehydrator. And then once it's super, super, super dry, like au sec, you deep fry it and it puffs. And then just hit it with some salt, and it's a nice, oily little crispy, puffed wild rice snack. But it's super simple. And it was sitting in my kitchen. In every kitchen, I always use it. And it never occurred to me that was something that would that people would like. And when you ate it, you were just eating it. I'm like, wow. I'm like, and then you're like, this has got to be in the book. And that's exactly what makes it interesting, because there's other recipes I wanted to do, and you steered me in that direction. And so there's things I didn't want to do, like the puffed wild rice, but I'm glad you convinced me, because I've eaten it so much in my life. I'm sick of it. It's like I don't eat steak anymore.
Yeah.
I really don't eat steak. I've eaten too much steak in my life. You know, lobster. I can't eat lobster anymore unless it's thermidor, though. That is.
That's right. Coming right up.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the water you swim in, and it's so familiar to you that you don't see it. And I'm a big fan of collaboration, and I know you are too. And it's so fun to have the back and forth, and respectfully so, right? Like, I wasn't always right, and so we would talk about it. It was intellectually really interesting. It was fun. I wonder, so should we be hello everybody in attendee lounge, do you have questions for us? Would you like to?
There are a couple if you want me to read them out.
Sure.
That'll work. So the first one, I'll just read what the person said. An innovative, top-notch chef writing a cookbook. That sounds intimidating when I think about cooking something from the book. What is your advice for amateur family cooks trying to cook from this book?
Shane, do you want me to answer that, or would you like to answer it?
We'll do two short ones quickly on this one.
Okay. So everything in this book is doable, because I made everything in my home kitchen, and I am not a professional chef. I cook a lot, but there are recipes that are very simple. So the galette from Shane's dad is a simple kind of soda bread almost recipe. There's bannock, there's the puffed fried wild rice, there's lots of salads, there's cakes, things like that. So very doable. And then you'll find some higher level dishes, so you can work up to those. But we did our best to make it interesting to everyone. So this book will appeal to professional chefs, because there will be some, pro recipes in there, but there are a lot of family style recipes, because sharing food is so integral to Shane's philosophy. So, and if you don't have a moose for the moose roast with boiled potatoes, just get a bison roast.
So boiled potatoes, they're just boiled potatoes, little bit of butter, little salt, little herbs. That's the dish. I grew up with that. You got to realize, we all grew up with boiled food. A lot of Indigenous people have grown up with boiled food. It's delicious. It's amazing. It's simple. Sweet potato salad, simple. The skewer is simple. Like Jen said, all you got to do is get an inspiration from a recipe. You don't have to follow the recipe either. I mean, the whole book is about dreams. It's about thinking. It's about, I don't think, someone's going to go try to run out and get meat glue and try to make the stained glass salmon that's soaked in beets and rolled into a log and cured. Like, I understand, but I mean, the idea is, so this is the thing. We chose this House of Anansi because me and Jen agreed. And it's funny because I said initially, and sorry, I don't mean to be going on here, Jen, and I said initially to Jen, I don't want to work with a publishing company that's going to disagree with me. House of Anansi proved me wrong. I was being arrogant, not arrogant. I would just say I just wanted what I wanted. And I don't want anyone to stop me. And then Jen got me there, and House of Anansi got us there. And here we got these beautiful recipes that are complicated. So I got everything I wanted, and more. So yes, there are easy recipes. And like Jen said, just work your way up, get inventive. You can switch them around.
Perfect. So another one is person said, this has been so interesting. I love hearing about how the two of you made this amazing book. Was there a recipe that gave you a lot of trouble, or one that was surprising, or something that you're really happy with now?
Well, all the recipes gave me trouble. So I will explain how we worked, because like I said, this is so fun. Shane is so spontaneous and creative, doesn't like to repeat himself. So he gets this inspiration and he's pacing around his kitchen like a shark. And then he walks into his cooler and he comes out with all these ingredients. And I look and I think, what is he going to do with these? And he just starts to cook, just like a madman. And so I'm racing around watching him, jotting down notes, and we don't even know what the dish is called. We don't know how it's going to turn out. Our wonderful photographer, Catherine Sprague, was basically on hand all the time when we were doing our cooking sessions. And we had our photo booth set up because when a dish came out, we would photograph it, and then we would taste it, and then we would put it back together as a recipe if we thought this was what, Shane, if his vision was executed properly and it tasted the way he wanted it to taste and it looked the way we wanted it to look, it was going in the book. So and then I would take all the recipes that I'd written down with my little scribbles back to my house in the Okanagan, and then I would be, boiling potatoes at midnight going, well, how long does it take to boil cubed potatoes? Right? Writing all these recipes. So was there a recipe that gave us a lot of trouble? Yes, no, but let's see. I'm gonna just take a quick peek through here. What did I have to make over and over again to get it right?
Yeah. What was that one? I can't remember.
And I kept pestering Shane over some of the recipe. Well, the rabbit in the garden is kind of complicated. The elk tender.
It is.
Yeah.
I would even say war paint was tough. It's simple, but
Yeah.
people don't realize how hard red fife is.
Yeah.
So the red fife, that dish is, I would say that's probably the hardest for me, because you have to make the sauce thick enough, but not thin enough, but not too thick, cool it down so you can make the handprint. But the red fife wheatberry, you've got to soak for a couple days, maybe not a couple days. Then I pressure cook it. Obviously, John, and that's where I used to get my red fife from. And it's super dense. It can be it's extremely good for your health. But yeah, you can screw up red fife in a snap and that sauce in a snap.
Yeah. Excellent. Ooh, I'm reading some of the.
So somebody else was wondering if there was any Blackfoot inspiration.
Yeah.
Oki. Hello.
Yeah.
So one of our friends is in the book.
So my friend, Cowboy Smith, he's got an X in there, Cowboy X Smith, but the X is silent. Cowboy Smith and me spent a lot of time in the Blackfoot tribe. I was in the Kainai. I spent a lot of time in Pekani. I did a documentary series there. I was super inspired by a guy named Harley. He's an elder there. And, we picked xylem in the forest. He taught me how to peel the leaves or the branches and suck the xylem away. This is the Blackfoot. This is the Pekani and Kainai. And the funny thing is, the reason why that area inspires me, because you got to realize, just because I'm Treaty 6 doesn't mean that the days of Treaty 6, Treaty 7, come on. We're all people. We're all human beings. Indigenous people should all get along all the time. Those days are long gone. We can't forget about history. We also got to move on with some things. We do need the knowledge bundles for sure, like Jen said, but we got to move on. Blackfoot, love them. I don't think I've seen taller Indigenous people in my life than the Bloods.
It's true. We have.
That's just a joke.
Yeah, we do have lots of bison in the cookbook as well. So definitely foods from Blackfoot.
Well, exactly. And the buffalo jumps all around that area too, right?
Yeah. And it's beautiful there too. So you live in a beautiful part of the world.
Oh, totally. It's so peaceful.
Yeah. Yes, Linda says Oki from the Kainai Nation. She said that she's going to be getting the book for her family members. She hasn't been to River Cree for a while, but is hoping to go and taste the food. And she loves the stories. She was wondering, though, if you'd be interested in presenting in high schools.
100%. That's my world right now. To the day I expire is to spread the word of, and it's not even just about my cookbook. It's about the story of. So this is the thing. Somebody came to me and just give me a second. If somebody came to me and said, "Why did you have?" And Jen, you know this is not arrogant or ignorant. Why did you have a Munya working with you? Why did you have a white woman working with you? And so the one thing I said was, it's not about skin color all the time, guys. It's about the fact that I picked the best writer in the country. And I need her to be part of this book to get all the knowledge from me, pull it out of me. And you know what? If she comes to the River Cree, she doesn't need to. I can go see whoever and sign a book. I have no problem. And we'll get pictures, we'll have fun, we'll laugh. That's what I do. I got a truck sitting here. I'll go anywhere.
Shane is really good with high school, especially with kids. So absolutely, get in touch with him or me, and he'll come and talk to kids. Because one of the things that I really appreciate about Shane is how much outreach he does. It's very tiring what he does. He's on TV a lot. He has competed on these really grueling shows like Top Chef Canada and or Iron Chef and Chopped Canada. And those are exhausting days, like 15, 16-hour days in the kitchen. Your personal reputation is on the line. You never know how it's going to be edited, but right? But she wanted to be an Indigenous chef on these shows because growing up, and even now, there's just not enough visibility of Indigenous food, Indigenous professional chefs. And there's this whole great group of people coming up now in the professional cooking world that's just going to revolutionize Canadian cooking, because they're cooking from their First Nations roots, and it's really exciting.
Okay, there's a question for Shane. Are there any spices or ingredients particular to your recipes that you had a hard time finding in the store or sourcing from the environment?
A hard ingredient that was hard to find, and you know what? I'm going to say this right now because I've never done it. So, you know, just because I'm Indigenous does not necessarily mean I'm hyper Indigenous, meaning I know everything about my culture. So I don't dance. I don't powwow. I don't drum. Okay, that's a reality. I'm a chef. I cook. I'm Indigenous. I just make Indigenous food to the level that I believe. Like it's my interpretation with Jen too. So the one thing that I've always wanted to try to find, that I did for a little bit, was sweetgrass. Like, man, it's impossible to find, but it's always in certain areas. Like my nation, there's sweetgrass out there. And the way you're supposed to do it, to be honest with you, if you do find sweetgrass, you never take it all. That's a rule. That's an Indigenous rule. You have to take only a bit and leave the rest for other people to find. But I've never found sweetgrass in my life. I just buy it. So that's the ingredient. I'm being honest.
And we give substitutions in the book because we do use moss berries, which are from the north. And those are a little bit difficult to find. So you can use Saskatoons, you can use blueberries. And, you know, don't let one ingredient or two ingredients stop you from trying a recipe. substitute or just leave it out unless it's, sort of a key ingredient. But
yeah,
these are Shane's paintings, and you can paint with the same palette, but create your own work of art. So
Jen, I have a question for you. Did we use reindeer moss in something in this book? I can't remember. Yeah, see, that's another one.
I think we did, or I know you've used it in competition.
Yeah, it was a competition, right? Gold medal plates.
Yeah. And so, but moss is not the main component of a dish. So it's a garnish. And so if you don't have that garnish, make the dish anyways.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Person wrote, I love your presentation. You two work well together. I can't wait to get the book. Great concept, food, and built-in stories. And they wrote, Shane, do you have a favorite food to cook? I'm assuming beyond what, is probably in the cookbook.
Oh, it's a tough one. So are they asking that in a professional way or a home cooking way? That's a tough one. I would say if I was you see, this is the problem. Jen said it best. My mind changes from day to day. I used to work in a sushi bar. I love Indian food. I love Italian food. I love Mediterranean food. I love vegetarian food. If I was to say right at this particular moment, if I was running my restaurant and make something right now, because it's the only way I can think, that inspires me, I'm going to pick something I don't know how to make and try to figure out how to make it. So that's the best answer I got.
That's a great answer. So I think we're at time now. So we really appreciate the two of you coming to speak today. I know it's a little bit different than being in person, but we really, really appreciate it. And we had a great turnout and lots of comments. So thank you two very much for that.
Well, thank you, everyone. And you can always find us on our social media channels if you have questions as well.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.